Trusting Biden. We are now in a new Cold War with Russia thanks to the sterling leadership of President Joe Biden. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, Joe Biden gave Russia tips on what critical infrastructure they should attack in the United States should we be in a state of war with Russia.
Another area we spent a great deal of time on was cyber and cybersecurity. I talked about the proposition that certain critical infrastructure should be off limits to attack, period, by cyber or any other means. I gave them a list. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, 16 specific entities. 16 defined as critical infrastructure under U.S. policy, from the energy sector to our water systems.
During a state of war, it's important that we trust the civilian leadership representing our country. Joe Biden is not just the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military, he's also the titular head of NATO. But there are enemies to deal with at home. Candace Owens received an email from a snotty virtual signaler at the New York Times asking if she was advancing ideas that Ukraine is a corrupt country similar to Russian state TV. Here's the email, dated Monday, March 21st, 2022. Hi there, I'm writing from the New York Times. We're working on a story about Russian messaging that includes some of your comments. We note that you advanced the idea that Ukraine was a corrupt country, which matched comments we've seen from Russian state media. And then she responded, I educated myself about both the neo-Nazi problem in Ukraine and the unyielding corruption, thanks to the New York Times. Now, you can't actually go and look at a New York Times story. Fortunately, this person at WordPress has duplicated the New York Times story. June 8, 2016, Ukraine struggles to shake off legacy of corruption. This case of possible influence peddling is under review by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau, but it's hardly the only worrying sign for a government swept into power in 2014 on a wave of popular anger at the egregious corruption of the previous president. Ukraine's problems are not just its own. As a plum in the new Cold War-like struggle between Russia and the West, Ukraine received a $40 billion bailout package from Western governments and the International Monetary Fund. Politifact published an interesting story back at the start of the Biden administration, noting that recent administrations with the most criminal indictments are those of Donald Trump, President Nixon, and President Reagan. And the recent administrations with the least criminal indictments are President Obama, President Carter, and President Clinton. Notice a pattern, Politifact asks. Well, there's a pattern that they wish you to notice as they lead you by the nose to the conclusion that Politifact wants the reader to go to, which is not journalism, by the way. A journalist would report the facts and then let the reader determine what the pattern is. In my case, I think this is a profound comparison between Democrat and Republican administrations, because this shows me that local, state, and federal government in the United States of America is largely staffed by Democrat career bureaucrats, Democrat prosecutors, Democrat judges. And when Donald Trump spoke of the deep state and of the swamp, he was referring specifically how the bureaucracy treats Republican administrations as an aberration, something that they need to tie up in so many lawsuits and punish in so many ways that the Republican president, going back to Nixon, is unable to function. President Nixon won a stunning, sweeping second term in office, and the all-Democrat Congress made sure that he was not able to govern. And so they sent many officials to prison who even had nothing to do with Watergate, such as Nixon aide Dwight Chapman. Ronald Reagan did not have a Watergate scandal, so the Democrats invented one, claiming that a difference in policy over Nicaragua between the Democrats in Congress and the Reagan administration was a crime by the Reagan administration, which they called Iran-Contra. But the only crime was that Democrats were not in the presidency. They restricted and impinged on Reagan's lawful, legal right to govern as President of the United States. But both of those examples pale in comparison to the all-out full-court press by the Democratic Party, by the judiciary, by academia, by the news media, and by every bureaucrat in government to tie Donald Trump into knots. He was sued in lawsuits by bureaucrats and Democrat district attorneys before he was president, while he was president, and now after he was president. Look at the stories that surround the Trump administration and then think about that Politifact figure. Appeals court orders judge to dismiss Michael Flynn case. The judge, who was assigned by the deep state to persecute any Trump official such as Michael Flynn, continued prosecuting Michael Flynn after the prosecution team had dropped the case. The judge continued prosecuting a person when the judge was supposed to rule on guilt or innocence. This is all partisanship by Democrats abusing the state of office, abusing the impartial government to serve the Democratic Party. The Biden administration, which told us patriotism was defined by wearing a mask in all places, including by yourself outdoors, now wants us to trust them as Russia and the European Union face off in a possible war. Remember, Joe Biden is the person who abandoned schoolgirls. Here's a story dated this week. While Joe Biden is distracted by Ukraine, look what the Taliban is doing, banning girls from going to school. This is the legacy of Joe Biden's leadership. The man who abandoned women, children, and the elderly to Taliban terrorists and slavery is now going to save Europe from Putin and Russia. Leadership is all about trust. If the people of Afghanistan could not trust Joe Biden, why would the people of Ukraine have any faith that Joe Biden will save them? This week, President Biden promised to impose even greater sanctions on Russia.
We will join our partners in imposing further sanctions on Russia and tightening the existing sanctions to crack down on evasion and to ensure robust enforcement.
The only problem with this attitude is that many people don't remember or didn't research what was the original reason that Imperial Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, kicking off America's full entry into World War II. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed sanctions against Imperial Japan, a full embargo on fuel, oil, and heavy metals. Japan formulated their Pearl Harbor attack strategy and invaded the Philippines and Singapore as a result of this embargo. So when you see Joe Biden and his team talking tough about sanctions, just be aware that some countries view that as a reason to escalate the war to its utmost horror. Thank you.